If there is one hill in math that I am willing to die on, it's that the FOIL method is stupid. I hate the FOIL method, and every year I debate whether or not I should teach my students the FOIL method at all. And the reason I even bother doing it is because there are some teachers who love the FOIL method and will refer to it in future math classes. And so I don't want you to get to those math classes and have no idea what they're talking about when they refer to the FOIL method. So I want you to at least be familiar with it, even though I think the method is dumb. It's to the point where some of them will use the word FOIL as a verb. They'll say, all right, take these polynomials and FOIL them. And when they say FOIL, what they mean is multiply. When they say FOIL these polynomials, they mean multiply them. So I think the FOIL method is dumb because whenever you are foiling something, it means use the distributor property. FOIL means distributor property, but it's this cutesy little acronym um, for the distributor property to help you remember which order to do the distributor property in. So the acronym FOIL stands for first is the F, the O is either outer or outside, the I is for inner or inside, and then the L is for last. And there's a couple of reasons why I think FOIL is dumb, but the biggest one is that the FOIL method only works if you're doing a binomial multiplied by a binomial, whereas the distributor property works no matter how big the polynomials are that you're multiplying by. So if you just learn distributor property, you're set for life when you multiply polynomials. But there are some people who just think the distributive property is not good enough and you just need a special name for when it's a binomial times a binomial. So this is my penance as a math teacher so that when you get to future math classes and somebody goes, just FOIL them, you'll know what they're talking about. They're not talking about how to preserve your lunch or protect your brain from alien invasion. It's a technically a math technique. Okay, so here's how it works. First means the first term in each set of parentheses. So in this first set of parentheses, z minus x, the first term is z, and in the second set of parentheses, the first term is also z. So it means multiply z times z. Multiply the first terms together. Then you add the outer terms multiplied together. So when you look at these parentheses, which two terms are on the outside of the whole problem? It's z and it's negative 12 are on the outside. So z and negative 12. So you do z times negative 12. Now I want you to notice here, if we were just doing the distributor property, this is the order we would do it in. We would distribute the z to those things, z times z and z times negative 12. It's exactly the same as the distributor property. Then you would do the inner terms, the two terms that are inside the parentheses, which the innermost terms are negative 6 and z. These terms right here, negative 6 and z. So you do negative 6 times z. And then L is last in each set of parentheses, which terms are last, and it's the negative 6 and then negative 12. So you would add negative 6 times negative 12, which is the exact same order you would do this in if you were doing distributive property. You would distribute negative 6 times z and then negative 6 times negative 12. It's exactly the distributor property, but there's this cutesy little acronym so you can remember the order to do distributor property, I guess. So z times z is z squared plus z times negative 12 is negative 12z plus negative 6 times z is negative 6z plus, and then negative 6 times negative 12 is a positive 72. And then you would see if there's anything to combine. And as usual, the two terms in the middle can be combined. Negative 12 and negative 6 is negative 18. So our final answer is z squared minus 18z, or you could do plus negative 18z plus 72. So FOIL will have you come up with the right answer, but so will distributive property. And like I said, FOIL only works for a binomial times a binomial, whereas distributive property works for monomial times binomial, monomial times trinomial, bi times tri times tri. Distributive property works for everything. FOIL just works for 2 times 2, but whatever. Some people swear by it and whatever. This is just to prepare you for those people. I will not use the term foil in any of my classes, but if you take one of those other math teachers, you need to at least be familiar with it, I guess. So let's use it one more time on this problem, and then you can put it in the back of your brain for future math classes. So we'll do the first term, which is 5x times 2x. And yes, I'm going to write it like I'm doing the distributive property because I'm stubborn. Firsts are 5x and 2x, which is 10x squared. Outside are 5x and 8, which is going to give us 40x. The inner or inside terms are negative 4 and 2x. So we do negative 4 times 2x, which is negative 8x. And then L for last, negative 4 and 8 are the last terms, and negative 4 times 8 is negative 32. My God, those arrows look just like distributive property, don't they? And then we combine our two terms in the middle. 40x minus 8x is 32x. And there is the, in my humble opinion, totally useless FOIL method. I advise you to never think of it as FOIL, think of it as distributed property. But if somebody says, take these polynomials and FOIL them, they mean multiply them using the distributed property.